top 5 unsolved Christmas time mysteries. The Los Feliz Murder Mansion. In December 1959, Dr. Harold Perelson suffered a violent psychotic break. He took a hammer and beat his wife to death with it. Then, he almost beat his 18-year-old daughter to death as well. When his 2 younger children woke up after hearing their screams, he calmly told them, "Nothing's wrong. Go back to bed." Dr. Perelson then retired to the bedroom, where he calmly finished a chapter of a book that he had been reading. After that, he poured himself a glass of acid and drank it, killing himself in a slow, painful death. But believe it or not, this story gets even stranger. The Perelson house was purchased by a couple named Julian and Emily Enriquez. Inexplicably, the Enriquez couple never lived in the home. In fact, for some odd reason, they never even changed a single thing, leaving the house exactly the way it was on the night of the murder-suicide. To this day, almost 60 years later, the Los Feliz murder mansion remains the same as it was on the night of the December 1959 murder. The house still contains its original 1950s furniture and appliances. There's even Christmas gift wrapping paper that had been left out after Mrs. Perelson had wrapped some Christmas presents shortly before her murder. The final Christmas celebration. On December 18th, a wealthy older woman in her mid-60s strolls into a Virginia cemetery called Pleasant Valley. She heads to the site of the graveyard's baby graves, a location labeled Babyland by the cemetery. She lays out a plastic tarp, sets up a Christmas tree near the graves, and decorates it with ornaments and ribbons. She then begins listening to several comedy recordings on her old-fashioned Walkman cassette player. While she relaxes near her newly decorated Christmas tree and listens to her tapes, she drinks brandy and swallows several Valium. She then puts a plastic bag over her head, tapes it closed with duct tape, and then proceeds to slowly suffocate herself to death. When the woman's body is found, the police find a note that reads, quote, "Deceased by own hand. Prefer no autopsy. Please order cremation with funds provided. Thank you, Jane Doe." Along with the note, there are 2 $50 bills, one for the coroner's payment and one for the cemetery. The Warminster Thing. On Christmas Day in 1965 in the small English town of Warminster, a series of bizarre events began to occur. A woman walking to church for Christmas services was knocked to the ground by what she could only describe as an odd sound passing overhead. The so-called odd sound was reported that Christmas Day by multiple Warminster residents and came to be known as the Warminster Thing. The incidents continued. Witnesses stated that the sound, quote, killed pigeons in flight, peppered dormice with holes, and stunned animals, partridges, and pheasants. Some people even said that they were knocked down by the strange force of the sound. Soon after the multiple occurrences of the sound, reports of UFO sightings began in the small English town. It has been over 50 years since the first Christmas Day occurrence of the Warminster Thing, but these strange events still take place in Warminster, England to this day. The strange case of Matilda Rooney. On Christmas Eve, an elderly couple named Patrick and Matilda Rooney asked their live-in farmhand John Larson to join them to celebrate the Christmas season with a couple of drinks. After imbibing and sharing a pleasant chat with the older couple, farmhand John Larson retires to his room on the 2nd floor to bed down for the night. When Larson awakes the next morning, what he finds downstairs chills him to the core. His employer, Patrick Rooney, is lying lifeless on the floor, apparently dead from smoke inhalation. Alarmed and fearful that the house might be on fire, John Larson searches the residence, but he can find no evidence of a fire anywhere inside. However, the case becomes even more bizarre when Larson searches the house's kitchen. There he finds Matilda Rooney's charred, severed foot, surrounded by ash, and lying on a scorch mark on the kitchen floor 7 feet wide. None of the rest of the kitchen shows any signs of fire damage whatsoever. It was as if Matilda had simply burst into flames sometime during the night. Flames so hot that they had reached a temperature of over 1400 degrees Celsius, and reduced Matilda's body to ash. Yet the same fire hadn't burned anything else in the house and had only scorched the floor beneath Matilda's body. The horrifying murder of Tracy Mertens. On December 23, 1994, Tracy Mertens answered the door of her home in Birmingham, England. She was attacked, blindfolded, and dragged from her home by two men. They stuffed her into the trunk of a yellow Ford Escort and sped away. The men drove Tracy 70 miles to Eton Christ Church, where they then forced her from the car. On the steps of the Eton Church, the two men doused Tracy with gasoline and set her on fire. Suffering burns over 95% of her body, Tracy died in the hospital in the early hours of Christmas Eve. Police offered a reward of £30,000 for any information leading to the arrest of the two men responsible. However, no one ever came forward. It has now been over 20 years since Tracy's horrifying abduction and death, but the two men who killed her have never been found.